She was just a night shift cleaner in a forgotten Bronx hotel, until one rainy night, she saved a stranger who turned out to be a billionaire. What followed? A shocking gift, a web of corruption, a powerful enemy, and a woman who chose to fight, not flee. Layla Benton didn't just take over a broken hotel, she turned it into a sanctuary of truth and light. But what does it really cost to stand up against power? Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you long after the credits roll. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It poured in sheets across the South Bronx, sweeping through gutters and battering the faded neon sign of the Ember Inn. At 3:04 a.m., the streets were empty except for one figure, hunched over near the curb, his $1,000 coat clinging to his frame like wet tissue. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't seem to care that his shoes were sinking into a puddle forming over a crack in the sidewalk. Layla Benton noticed him while taking out the trash. Her hoodie was soaked and her sneakers squished with every step, but she paused anyway. Something felt wrong. The way he stood, unmoving, as if held up by invisible strings. Her instincts flickered. "You shouldn't be out here, sir," she called, half out of habit, half out of concern. "Not dressed like that? Not at this hour, not in this neighborhood." No response. She took a step closer, gripping the plastic bag a little tighter. The man didn't turn or acknowledge her. Instead, his legs buckled. He dropped like a marionette with its strings cut, collapsing face first into the slick asphalt. For a moment, he didn't stir. Layla dropped the trash. Across the street, under the flickering light of a boarded-up liquor store, two men stood in the shadows. Hoods up, faces half lit by the glow of a dying street lamp, they leaned off the wall in unison. One nudged the other, nodding toward the fallen man. They weren't coming over to help. That much was obvious. Layla's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She didn't wait to think, didn't hesitate. She ran. Her sneakers splashed through the gutter, water soaking through the soles and into her socks as she sprinted across the street. "Sir," she called again, kneeling beside him. Up close, he looked to be in his early 30s, maybe a few years older than her. His hair was plastered to his forehead. A fancy gold watch clung to his wrist. His wallet had fallen open nearby, bills and business cards fluttering weakly in the rain. He groaned but didn't rise. Come on," Layla muttered under her breath, eyeing the two figures now crossing the street. Slow, deliberate. Too slow to be casual. Too direct to be innocent. "Not tonight," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. With strength she didn't know she had, Layla hooked her arms beneath the man's shoulders and hoisted. He was dead weight, waterlogged and drunk, but he moved just enough to keep his feet under him. Stumbling and half dragging him, she made her way toward the side entrance of the Ember Inn. The keypad blinked red, then green. She slammed her shoulder against the door, pushed it open, and they tumbled inside just as the two men reached the sidewalk. She didn't look back, didn't need to. Inside, the hallway lights flickered and buzzed overhead. The tiles were cracked and smelled faintly of bleach and mildew. Layla eased the man onto the bench outside the laundry room. His breathing was heavy, thick with alcohol, and his skin was pale. She dug into his wallet, hesitating only slightly. Not to rob him, but to identify him in case he didn't wake up. Gold-trimmed business cards, elegant lettering. Her eyes widened. "Julian Cross?" she whispered. "Wait, the Julian Cross?" Layla had seen the name before. On real estate signs uptown, on the business section of the newspaper her brother still subscribed to. Heir to the Cross Empire. Billionaire. High society. The kind of person who never set foot in a place like the Ember Inn, much less passed out on a South Bronx sidewalk. "Anthony," she called toward the front desk. A moment later, a lanky man with messy curls and thick glasses appeared from behind the scratched counter. "Check this ID," Layla said, holding out the card. Anthony squinted, then blinked. Holy crap. That's him. She looked down at the man now slumped on the bench, a small puddle forming beneath him. "I'm not letting him crash here. No way." "What are you going to do?" Anthony asked. "Call a cab, and not one of those app drivers who will rob him blind while he's blacked out." 15 minutes later, the cab pulled up. Layla helped Julian into the back seat, his body heavy against her. She fastened the seat belt, took one last look at his face, and tucked a folded 50 into the driver's hand. "Don't charge him," she said. "Just get him home safe." The driver raised an eyebrow, then nodded. As the cab disappeared into the rain, its tail lights glowing red in the mist, Layla stood motionless on the sidewalk. Her hoodie clung to her shoulders. Her hair dripped rainwater onto the cracked pavement. Her shift was far from over. Back inside, the old clock above the front desk blinked 3:52 a.m. "Just another night at the Ember," she muttered, peeling off her hoodie and wringing it out in the break room sink. But she knew better. Something had shifted. She could feel it in her bones. She didn't know what made her run into the rain like that. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the refusal to let another person fall while the world turned its back. Maybe it was what her mother always said: kindness isn't weakness, it's the loudest kind of strength. Outside, the storm began to ease, and far above the broken roofs of the South Bronx, the first light of morning cracked open the sky. The following Thursday, just before the lunch rush, Layla was folding cocktail napkins at the end of the bar. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. She didn't hear the door at first, just the soft ding of the entry bell. Probably Mr. Ruiz, she figured, the regular who always asked for extra lemon in his tea but never tipped more than a dime. "Excuse me," a voice said. Smooth, low, polished. She looked up and nearly dropped the napkin. Standing there in a perfectly tailored suit, his hair slicked back and his posture poised, was the man she had hauled off the street. Julian Cross. But not the drenched, barely conscious version. This man looked composed, powerful, controlled. "I believe I owe you a proper thank you," he said. The entire bar froze. Anthony peeked over the edge of his monitor. Naomi, the housekeeper, suddenly found a pressing need to wipe the countertop directly beside them. Layla didn't blink. "Looks like you're walking just fine," she said. "I'd say the cab did its job." Julian stepped closer. His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it. Purpose. "It wasn't the cab that saved me that night." "I didn't do anything anyone else wouldn't have done," she said, arms crossed. "Then it's a shame no one else did." His eyes swept across the bar, then landed back on her. "I looked into you, Miss Benton." Her stomach tightened. "I'm sure you did. You dropped out of college at 19 to care for your brother. You've worked 3 jobs. You've paid more out of pocket for damage here than any employee should. You even covered my cab fare when you thought I couldn't. You're making a lot of assumptions." "No," he said softly. "I'm stating facts." There was a silence between them. Then Julian pulled a slim leather folder from his coat and set it gently on the counter. "I own this place," he said, "and several others. But this one, the Ember Inn, it's been on the chopping block. I was ready to sell it off. Poor numbers, terrible management, no future." Layla narrowed her eyes. "If you're firing me, you really overdressed." "I'm not firing you." He looked directly at her. "I'm offering you ownership." The napkin in her hand tore in two. "You're what?" "You heard me." She stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but he didn't flinch, didn't smirk, just left the folder there. "People don't give away hotels," she said slowly, "especially not to janitors in the Bronx. People don't usually drag billionaires out of the rain either." She didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "So what is this, some kind of rich guy guilt trip?" Julian's expression softened. "This isn't about guilt, it's about recognition. I don't need your recognition." "No," he agreed, "but you deserve it." She looked down at the folder like it might explode. "I need time." "You've got it," he said, sliding it closer. "Everything you need is in there. Legal transfer, cleared debts, grants for renovations. My lawyer can walk you through every detail. And if I say no, then I'll walk away. No strings." He turned, paused, and looked back. "There's something about you, Layla. You don't wait for permission to do what's right. That's rare." Then he was gone. Just like that. Layla stood frozen, the folder on the counter untouched. Naomi muttered, "You gonna open that thing?" "I don't even know what's in it." "You just got handed a miracle, girl," Naomi said. "Might want to see if it's real." That night, after closing down the bar and locking the doors, Layla sat alone in the dim lobby. The folder rested in her lap. She hadn't touched it yet. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother. "You okay?" She didn't answer. Instead, she opened the folder. Inside were documents, stamped, signed, notarized, a list of debts cleared by a shell corporation, pre-approved renovation funds, a letter on thick cardstock in perfect penmanship. "You gave a stranger dignity. Let this give you the same. J.C." Layla exhaled, slow and shaky. This was insane. Impossible, but maybe, just maybe, it was real. The Ember Inn looked no different that following Monday morning, yet every detail felt sharpened around the edges for Layla Benton. The way the brass handle turned warm in her palm, the soft whir of the front desk fan, even the scent of stale coffee from the break room, it all pulsed louder than usual, like the building itself knew something was about to change. The folder sat in her locker for 2 days before she opened it again. Part of her still believed it was a joke, a test, or worse, a trap. But each line she read, each legal stamp, each signature in dark blue ink whispered the same impossible thing. You own this place now. The idea chased her through every shift, trailed her like a shadow. She refilled the vending machine and wondered if the soda deliveries were her responsibility now. She sorted mail and questioned whether her name should be on the address labels. Anthony noticed her spacing out during her shift behind the desk. You okay? He asked, nudging a cup of tea toward her. Layla stared at it, then shook her head. Not even a little. He didn't press, just gave her that patient, nerdy smile of his. The one that said, whatever storm you're in, I've got It was late afternoon when she finally dialed the number scrawled on the last page of the folder. A woman answered, her voice crisp and composed. Brenda Witt speaking. This is Layla Benton. I was told you're handling the legal transfer of the Ember Inn? Yes, Miss Benton. Everything is in order. We're only waiting for your signature to finalize full ownership. Layla's mouth went dry. I need to ask, why me? Brenda paused. Mr. Cross believes in second chances, and apparently in your capacity to fix what others broke. That sounds like a fancy way of saying he dropped a grenade in my lap. You can always walk away. Layla didn't answer. She didn't hang up either. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay on her futon, the folder splayed open beside her like a map to a planet she wasn't sure she wanted to visit. The apartment above the laundromat buzzed with the usual hum of machines below. Her brother was already asleep in the room across the hall. The door cracked just enough for Layla to hear him breathing. Soft, steady. The only constant she had. She stared at the ceiling. A hotel. Her hotel. The thought clashed against everything she knew about herself. Dropout, caregiver, cleaner. She wasn't built for property taxes and renovation schedules. Was she? Her phone lit up on the nightstand. No message. Just a reminder from the calendar app. Grocery day. Eggs, broth, bleach. Bleach. The irony made her laugh once, hollow and startled. The next morning, she dressed in jeans and a clean gray hoodie and walked back into the Ember Inn. Not as a cleaner, not as a desk clerk, but as the woman who might own it. Anthony raised an eyebrow when he saw her behind the counter. You open it? Yeah, she replied. He gave a low whistle. So, what now? Layla didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the back hallway, to a door she had never once stepped through, the manager's office. Carl, the former manager, used to vanish behind it in a puff of cigar smoke, only emerging to bark orders about linen supplies or liquor shipments. He'd pad the books, skim tips, and leave Layla to smooth things over with angry guests and overworked staff. He was gone now, but the ghost of his mismanagement still lingered. She turned the handle. It creaked. The office was worse than she remembered. Musty. Stagnant. A stack of invoices leaned against the wall like they were too tired to stand upright. The computer monitor blinked in ancient blue. A calendar from 2014 still hung crooked beside a chipped corkboard. Layla stood in the middle of it all and took a slow breath. Then she got to work. She started by sorting through files, some so old they crumbled in her fingers. She found unpaid invoices, vendor receipts, service logs that didn't make sense. One company, Elmage Cleaning, had no tax ID. Another, Metro Fire Systems, was registered to a P.O. box in Delaware, and a third listed over $8,000 for HVAC diagnostic updates that had never happened. This wasn't just neglect. It was fraud, and it stank. By noon, her hands were black with dust and ink. Her phone vibrated. It was a text from Naomi. Lunch? I got noodles. Layla replied, rain check. I'm knee-deep in moldy paper and lies. At 3:07 p.m., she called the number listed for legal questions again. Brenda answered immediately. Why would someone give me a business drowning in fake expenses and phantom vendors? Layla asked, her voice taut. There was a pause. Because he believes you're the only one who wouldn't look away. I'm not here to clean up a mess some rich men left behind. Then don't, Brenda replied calmly. Make it yours. Burn what you need. Rebuild. Layla stared at the receiver, stunned. That evening, she didn't go home. Instead, she stayed late, yanked the dusty blinds closed, poured herself stale coffee from the break room pot, and laid out every invoice she could find across the office floor like a paper crime scene. The air was thick with heat and regret. At midnight, Naomi appeared in the doorway with a Tupperware container. "I figured you'd still be here," she said. "I made sweet potatoes. Want some?" Layla looked up, eyes rimmed with exhaustion but grateful. "Yes, please." They sat on the floor surrounded by files and dust bunnies, eating in silence for a while. The Ember Inn hummed above them like it was holding its breath. "You really going through with this?" Naomi asked between bites. "I don't know yet," Layla admitted. "Part of me thinks I'm insane. The other part thinks I've already started." Naomi chuckled. "You always were the only one around here with any damn sense." Carl sure didn't like hearing it. Naomi rolled her eyes. Carl didn't like anyone questioning his cigar budget. Layla smiled faintly. "You take this place over," Naomi continued, "and people will back you. The right people, anyway." Layla glanced around the office, this forgotten corner that had once been Carl's hideaway. Now it thrummed with new energy. Not just survival, momentum. The next morning, she arrived early with a notebook and a plan. She started with the people. One by one, she met with every staff member. She asked about their shifts, what was broken, what was working, what wasn't. She listened more than she spoke. Some, like Naomi and Anthony, were quick to support her. Others, like Miguel in maintenance, scoffed. "So the cleaner's the boss now? Cute." Layla didn't flinch. On Friday, she posted a notice on the bulletin board outside the break room. The paper was bright white, the words bold and clear. "Effective immediately, the Ember Inn is under new ownership. We rebuild from the inside out. If you're in, I'll see you Monday at 9 a.m. If not, I wish you well. Layla Benton." She didn't sleep that weekend. She barely ate. But when Monday morning arrived, she stood at the front desk in a clean blouse with a clipboard in her hand and her heart thudding like a war drum. At 8:57, Naomi arrived, wearing her usual faded sneakers and a new shade of lipstick. At 9, Anthony walked in holding 3 spreadsheets. At 9:05, Jenny from housekeeping shuffled in, quiet but present. By 9:12, 12 employees had shown up. Layla stood before them all, barely breathing. "I'm not a CEO," she began. "I'm not a miracle worker, but I'm here. And if we build this place right, none of us will ever have to go home ashamed again." There was silence. Then Naomi clapped once. Anthony followed. Then the room filled with applause, not wild or dramatic, but solid. Real. Layla exhaled for the first time in days. The rebuild had begun. Layla Benton spent most of her first week as owner trying not to drown, figuratively and literally. On Wednesday, the boiler gave out during a particularly cold morning, sending guests into the lobby wrapped in towels and fury. By Thursday, the delivery trucks skipped their entire order, leaving the kitchen short on eggs, sugar, and patience. And on Friday, the woman in room 304 claimed her earrings had been stolen by a ghost. Layla suspected the real culprit was the warped floorboard beneath the vanity, but she checked the security footage anyway, just in case. Each day felt like plugging holes in a leaky ship while steering it through a thunderstorm. Still, under all the chaos, something had started to shift. Jenny, who used to sneak out 15 minutes early every shift, was now staying late to reorganize the housekeeping closet. Anthony, normally glued to his spreadsheets, was offering to cover check-ins at the front desk when Layla needed time in the office. Even Miguel, who had been openly skeptical of her leadership, silently repaired the hot water pipe in the staff bathroom without being asked. It was movement. Maybe not momentum yet, but it was something alive. And it was giving Layla just enough hope to keep pushing forward. On Thursday morning, she sat at the desk in the office, sorting through old vendor files again. She had begun a meticulous digital log determined to eliminate every fake invoice, every suspicious name, every financial ghost from the system. That's when she saw it. Briarcrest Holdings. The name didn't stand out at first, but it was listed across multiple invoices, in different months, under different services: pest control, elevator maintenance, general inspection. And every amount billed? Just under $5,000. Layla's eyes narrowed. She opened the last 4 folders. More Briarcrest charges, same amount range, Slightly different dates, always vague services, always the same mailing address. Suite 16B, Midtown Manhattan. That didn't sound like a real vendor. It sounded like someone trying very hard to stay invisible. She leaned back in the squeaky chair and dialed the number listed at the top of the latest invoice. The phone rang twice before a robotic voice picked up. "This number has been disconnected." Her jaw tightened. She tried the number listed for another vendor, Nash Financial Group, who'd supposedly upgraded the security system last summer. Disconnected. She opened her laptop and cross-referenced the addresses. Both were tied to mail forwarding services, not real offices. One even shared a suite with 6 other shell companies. She stood up, walked into the hallway, and called, "Naomi? You got a second?" Naomi appeared, apron streaked with flour, a dish rag slung over her shoulder. "If you're about to ask me to fix the ice machine again, the answer is no. I nearly got electrocuted last time." Layla smirked, then turned serious. "Do you remember any vendors named Briarcrest Holdings or Nash Financial?" Naomi frowned. "Briarcrest, yeah. Carl used to mumble about them when the books didn't add up. Said they handled things. But I never saw anyone from that company. Not once." Layla felt a chill in her spine. "You think he was hiding something?" Naomi crossed her arms. "Girl, Carl hid everything except his damn cigars. Whatever it was, it stank." That night, after the last guest had gone to bed, Layla sat alone in the office. The walls buzzed with the soft hum of the vending machine outside. She had every folder, every invoice, every printed receipt spread out on the floor like a jigsaw puzzle made of lies. She grabbed a stack of sticky notes and started marking patterns. Repeated company names, duplicate service descriptions, addresses with no Google presence. 3 names kept coming back, over and over again. Briarcrest Holdings, Nash Financial, Eastgate Logistics. She opened the old locked filing cabinet in the back corner of the room, the one she'd found a rusted key for last week in the break room couch cushions. Inside were boxes of ledgers, not digital records but physical books, yellowed pages, dusty covers. She pulled one out labeled March and flipped through it. There it was, entries with amounts that didn't appear in any digital system. Handwritten logs labeled laundry service diversion or special materials procurement. None of it matched real records. Some entries were just initials, VK. Some were labeled as consulting fees with no supporting detail. This wasn't mismanagement. It was laundering. Her breath caught. She sat back, fingers trembling slightly, and texted Anthony. "You still in the building?" He replied a moment later. "Yeah. Just finishing payroll." A few seconds passed. Some guy in a suit came by earlier, asked about the new owner, said he was a friend of Carl's, didn't leave a card, gave me a weird vibe. Layla didn't respond immediately. She stared at the ledger in her lap, then gently closed it and placed it in her backpack. She locked the rest of the files back into the cabinet and sat there for a moment, hand pressed flat against the cold metal. This wasn't just about salvaging a failing hotel anymore. She had inherited a battlefield. The next afternoon, she called Brenda Witt, Julian's legal advisor. Her voice was calm but firm. "Miss Witt, did you or Mr. Cross ever investigate Carl's financial activity before handing over the inn?" There was a pause on the other end. "No. Mr. Cross was advised to walk away clean. He didn't want to inherit any baggage." Layla let the silence stretch. "Well, he might have gifted me more than a building. I think someone's been laundering money through the Ember, and I think they might still be trying." Brenda was quiet. "Then, I'll inform Mr. Cross. But be careful, Miss Benton. People who set up systems like this, they don't like the lights turned on." After she hung up, Layla stood for a long time in the quiet office, her hand on the locked cabinet. The walls didn't buzz anymore. They vibrated. By early evening, she had gathered the staff in the lobby for an unscheduled meeting. The chandelier above them flickered, but no one laughed. Not this time. "I need to tell you all something," Layla began. Her voice didn't shake. "I think this place was used for more than just hospitality. Some of the vendors we've paid over the years, they don't exist, and the money went somewhere." The room went still. Naomi's expression darkened. Jenny looked away. "Do you think Carl was involved?" Anthony asked. "I don't know yet," Layla replied. "But I do know this. If we keep moving forward without cleaning this out, we're building on poison." Naomi was the first to speak. "So what do you need from us?" Layla looked around the circle. They weren't auditors, they weren't lawyers, they were clerks, housekeepers, cooks. But they were hers. I need eyes, ears, memories, anything strange Carl ever said, deliveries that didn't make sense, people who came by after hours. Write it down, bring it to me. We piece this together. Jenny hesitated, then raised her hand. There was a guy a few months ago, drove a black BMW, said his name was Mr. V, came to meet Carl late at night, talked about expansions. I didn't trust him. Layla's spine stiffened. She added the name to the growing list of shadows. That night, she stayed late again. The office was dim, the air thick with heat. Her laptop screen cast a pale blue glow as she typed up names, addresses, search results, anything that might trace the connections. Some led nowhere. But then, deep in a comment thread on an old whistleblower blog, she found it. Briarcrest is a front. Look at the people behind it. One guy, initials VK, pulls the strings. Her heart pounded. She copied the comment, saved screenshots, and added them to a folder on her desktop titled Proof. She didn't know yet how deep it went. But she had found the rot, and she was going to cut it out. The air inside the Ember Inn felt heavier that night, like it knew something was coming. Layla Benton sat behind the front desk pretending to sort reservation cards, but her eyes stayed fixed on the glass doors. A storm had rolled in hours earlier, but this one wasn't in the sky. It was walking her way, and she knew it. The lobby was mostly empty. Anthony was in the back office running the day's numbers. Jenny was sweeping the third-floor hallway. Naomi had gone home with a warning. Don't let ghosts in unless they bring wine. Layla hadn't laughed. At 9:42 p.m., the front doors opened. The chime above them sang its tired note, and in stepped a man like he owned every brick in the building. Tall, calm, tailored. His charcoal gray suit was pressed so perfectly it looked sculpted. He moved with the smoothness of someone who never had to prove himself, never had to raise his voice. The cologne he wore drifted in ahead of him, sharp, clean, expensive. Evening, he said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Layla stepped from behind the desk, her voice dry. We're full tonight. He chuckled, slow and smooth. That's a shame. I'm not here for a room. Just wanted to see what all the buzz was about. She said nothing. He stepped closer, glancing around at the polished floors, the freshly painted walls, the new lighting fixtures that softened the once harsh glow of the lobby. You've cleaned up, he said. I like the new look. Less interrogative, more welcoming. Do I know you? Layla asked. He leaned one hand on the desk, letting the silence stretch before he replied. Call me Vincent. Her throat tightened. VK. The initials she'd found scribbled in the old ledgers. The name from Jenny's memory. The thread from the whistleblower blog. Vincent Kane. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black business card. No phone number, no company, just his name in embossed gold. Layla didn't touch it. Vincent smiled wider. You've been busy, calling vendors, asking questions, digging through files most people would have burned. I'm just trying to run a hotel. No, he replied, eyes narrowing slightly. You're trying to play detective in a story you don't understand. Layla didn't flinch. You're right. I don't understand why someone like you would bother showing up at all, unless you have something to hide. His jaw twitched just for a second. The mask slipped barely. Smart girl, he murmured. But smart doesn't always mean safe. The room changed then. The air grew tighter, like it had been vacuum sealed. The buzz of the vending machine in the corner felt louder. Layla's heartbeat synced with the slow click of the wall clock. Vincent stood up straighter, adjusting his cuffs. Walk away, Layla. Enjoy your little hotel. Repaint the walls. Serve your peach cobbler. But stop chasing shadows. You're not built for what's behind them. Her voice was low, steel hidden behind silk. You don't scare me. You should be. And with that, he turned and walked out, as calmly as he'd entered. No threats, no raised voice, just cold, quiet menace wrapped in Italian wool. The chime rang again as the doors closed. Layla stood frozen until the sound faded into the rain outside. Then she turned on her heel and marched straight into the back office. Anthony looked up from his laptop, startled. Everything okay? No, Layla said. Call Naomi. First thing tomorrow, we're changing every lock. Front, back, storage. And I want surveillance cameras installed. Real ones. Before the weekend. His eyes widened. Was that him? She nodded once. Vincent Kane. He was here. Later that night, Layla sat at her kitchen table with the old ledger open and her laptop beside it. She dug deeper than before. Public business filings, real estate transactions, tracing LLCs, P.O. boxes, holding companies. By 2 a.m., a pattern emerged. Vincent Kane wasn't just a ghost in Carl's system, he was the architect. He had stakes in 3 companies that had built the Ember Inn: Briarcrest Holdings, Nash Financial, and Eastgate Logistics. All 3 tied back to a parent company called Westridge Strategies, registered out of a WeWork office in Connecticut. Westridge was listed in nearly a dozen hotel property portfolios stretching from the Bronx to the Carolinas. Small hotels, often failing, all showing signs of strategic losses. They weren't just businesses, they were laundromats, for money, not clothes. And Layla had interrupted the rinse cycle. She copied every document, every link, every screenshot onto a secure USB drive. Then she sealed it in an envelope and scrawled one word on the front: insurance. She pried up the loose floorboard beneath her bed and slipped it inside. The next morning, the retaliation began. At 8 a.m., Jenny opened the walk-in freezer and found everything inside spoiled and dripping. The power had failed sometime during the night, even though the rest of the kitchen worked fine. At 9:30 a.m., a fire inspector arrived unannounced. He cited 3 violations, including one for a missing extinguisher that had passed inspection just weeks earlier. At 11:15 a.m., a delivery truck backed too hard into the loading dock, cracking the concrete and shattering 2 trash bins. The driver shrugged and blamed the brakes. By 2 p.m., Layla's hands were shaking as she filled out insurance forms. Naomi sat across from her in the lobby, arms crossed, eyebrows high. "This ain't random," Naomi said flatly. Layla didn't look up. "I know." "Then what do we do?" Layla set her pen down, leaned back, and stared at the lobby ceiling. "We hold the line." That night, she gathered the staff again. She didn't explain every detail, some of it was too risky, but she told them enough. "That man who came by," she said, "he's not here to negotiate, he's here to bully, and when bullies feel you pushing back, they hit harder." Miguel muttered, "We could lose the place." "We could," Layla admitted, "but if we stay silent, we'll lose more than that." Anthony stepped forward. "What are you going to do?" Layla looked at him, then the rest of the staff. Her voice didn't waver. "I'm going to tell the truth." That weekend, she made a call she'd been avoiding. Julian Cross answered on the second ring. His voice was groggy, tired, but unmistakably him. "Layla? You gave me this hotel," she said. "Did you know what was behind it?" Silence stretched. "I suspected," Julian said finally, "but I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore." "Well, it is now. I didn't mean to drag you into something dangerous. But I am in it," she said, "and I need to know, are you going to help me, or are you going to walk away again?" Julian exhaled, long and heavy. "Tell me what you found." She did. Every vendor, every fake invoice, every ledge she was walking. When she finished, there was no silence left between them, only resolve. "I'll call someone I trust," he said. "Someone who doesn't owe Vincent a damn thing." Layla closed her eyes. "Good, because I'm not backing down." Outside, wind lashed through the South Bronx streets, rattling trash cans and lifting yesterday's newspaper into the air like a ghost. Inside the Ember Inn, Layla opened the front doors and stood in the threshold. The sky above was black, heavy with something more than rain. But this time, she wasn't standing in the storm alone. 3 days after the stormy encounter with Vincent Kane, Layla Benton sat across from a woman in a navy trench coat at a small diner in Mott Haven, tucked into a corner booth far enough from the Ember Inn to avoid curious eyes, but close enough to run back if anything went sideways. The fluorescent light above flickered in rhythm with the soft clinks of spoons against ceramic. Layla hadn't touched her tea. The woman across from her stirred hers methodically, then finally looked up. Her voice was cool, practiced. "I've read your emails, listened to your voicemail 3 times. What you're sitting on, it's not small." "I know," Layla replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands were folded so tightly in her lap, the knuckles had gone pale. "That's why I didn't want to drop in a tip box. I needed someone with teeth." The woman gave a small nod. "Sarah Monroe, Bronx Gazette. 4 exposés, 3 lawsuits, 2 city council members ousted." Her expression didn't change. "I don't scare easy. I'm counting on that," Layla said, sliding the USB drive across the table. Sarah didn't pick it up right away. Instead, she studied Layla like someone appraising a witness. "You understand that if I run this, it won't just impact Vincent Kane. If the laundering ties are real, and I believe they are, it could bring down banks, businesses, maybe even people you've worked with. If they're guilty, Layla said, let them fall. Sarah's gaze sharpened. Then she reached for the drive and tucked it into her bag. All right, Miss Benton, she said. Buckle in. Back at the Ember Inn, a strange stillness had settled over the building. No more surprise inspectors. No more trucks crashing into docks or mysteriously dead walk-in freezers. But the calm didn't comfort Layla. It felt like the moment before a tidal wave, silent, thick with tension. Every shadow in the hallway made her flinch. Every knock on the door set her heart climbing into her throat. Anthony had started staying late, just in case. Naomi now kept a baseball bat tucked behind the laundry room door. Jenny insisted on walking Layla to her car at night, even though she only lived 4 blocks away. Through it all, Layla worked. She digitized every invoice, scanned every contract. She cross-referenced vendor files and flagged anything suspicious. She tore down Carl's old wall calendar and replaced it with a whiteboard that read, "Do not assume it's honest. Check." She installed real surveillance cameras, not the plastic dummies Carl had used to make guests feel safe. She updated the entire vendor list, cutting out every ghost company and replacing them with local suppliers she met with personally. She renamed the manager's office the Operations Center, not because it sounded impressive, but because it was now the beating heart of her quiet resistance. And then, on a quiet Sunday morning, her phone buzzed. It's happening. Front page. SM. Layla didn't breathe for 10 full seconds. She sat on the bench outside the laundry room, heart pounding. The article dropped like a bomb. Headline: Local hotel at center of multi-million-dollar laundering scheme, fraud network tied to high-profile hospitality investor. Sarah hadn't held back. She named names, connected dots, included scans of invoices, flow charts of shell companies, snippets of handwritten ledgers Carl had once hidden behind soda crates. She outlined how Vincent Kane had used a network of low-profile inns and struggling properties to move money through fake vendors, quietly, consistently, and for years. The story exploded online. By midday, Layla's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, radio hosts, former guests asking if she still served peach cobbler on Tuesdays, bloggers looking for a soundbite, influencers wanting a tour. One woman even called to ask if Layla would consider Lantern House merch. And then came the cops. 2 unmarked cars pulled up just after noon. Layla stood at the front desk as 2 plainclothes detectives entered the lobby, one flashing a badge. "We'd like to speak with Miss Layla Benton," the taller one said. "That's me," she said, calm as ice. They took her into the back office, now cleaner than ever. The lights buzzed above them as they laid out folders and questions. The detectives were polite, professional, but pointed. "What made you start looking into the vendors?" one asked. Layla didn't hesitate. "Because none of it made sense, and because too many people assumed I wouldn't ask." They requested her flash drives. She handed over duplicates. They asked about threats. She showed them Vincent's card. By the time they left, half the staff had gathered in the lobby, watching from behind the front desk like children peeking through curtains. Layla stepped out and raised her voice just enough for all of them to hear. "I'm not in trouble," she said. "But the people who use this hotel for crime, they are." There was a collective exhale, not of joy, but of release. That night, Layla returned to the same diner in Mott Haven. Sarah Monroe was already there, nursing a decaf coffee and scrolling through her phone. "You handled yourself like a pro," Sarah said, looking up. "Not bad for a hotel manager," Layla replied. "Technically," Sarah smirked, "you were a waitress a month ago." Layla laughed softly. "I just wanted a safe place to work. A place where my brother could visit without me being embarrassed." Sarah studied her. "You didn't sign up to blow open an interstate fraud ring." "Maybe no one signs up," Layla said. "Maybe the moment just finds you, and then you either stand up or let it pass." On the walk home, the Bronx was uncharacteristically quiet. No sirens, no shouting, just the hum of a city exhaling after a scream. Layla paused in front of the Ember Inn and looked up at the sign. The bulbs were still flickering, but there was something steady in it now. Inside, Anthony looked up from the counter and grinned. "They just aired it on Channel 7, he said. "Your name, your face, everything." Jenny peeked out from the stairwell, grinning. "You looked good on TV." Layla shook her head. I looked terrified. Same thing, Anthony replied. That night, long after everyone else had gone home, Layla wandered into the lobby, barefoot and holding a mug of warm tea. She stood in front of the window, watching the streetlights blink like old jazz rhythms. She pulled out her phone and opened a new note. To-do list. Monday. 1. Begin legal process to rebrand hotel. 2. Create hiring ad for security officer. 3. Order new outdoor sign. 4. Call mom. 5. Breathe. She set the phone down, leaned against the cool glass, and finally let herself exhale. She wasn't at the end of the journey, but she had turned a corner. The road ahead was still messy, still uncertain. But now, it was hers. 1 week after Sarah's article broke, Layla stood at the edge of the Ember Inn's parking lot, arms folded tightly against the spring wind as 2 contractors slowly lowered the old hotel sign from its rusted brackets. The faded letters, once a gleaming gold, now chipped and grimy, groaned as they were unscrewed and lowered to the pavement. A few curious neighbors had stopped on the sidewalk, watching from a distance as if a relic was being removed from a church steeple. Layla didn't speak. She simply watched. The new sign sat nearby, draped in a white canvas sheet. No one but her had seen what was underneath. Not Anthony, not Naomi, not even Sarah. She wanted the reveal to mean something. Not just a cosmetic change, but a declaration. Inside the hotel, the energy was different. Foot traffic had doubled since the exposé. Locals who had never stepped foot inside were now booking rooms for family visits or dropping off flyers for community classes. Small businesses asked to host pop-ups in the conference room. Journalists still called, but Layla had stopped picking up. She wasn't chasing headlines. She was chasing restoration. The inn itself had transformed. The front desk now gleamed with fresh paint, and the walls had been decorated with framed photos of South Bronx landmarks, most taken by Jenny's brother, a photography major home from college. The vending machine, once an embarrassing relic, had been replaced with a small coffee nook serving Naomi's cinnamon tea and peach scones on weekends. The old air smelled of lemon oil and hope. But Layla knew paint and pastries wouldn't be enough, not unless the people inside those walls truly felt safe. Felt seen. That's why, when Harvey Cross called to offer additional funds discreetly, what he called righting the wrong, Layla told him no. Not unless he did it in person. If he was going to show his face again, it needed to be with both feet planted on the ground he'd abandoned. He arrived quietly that afternoon. A town car pulled into the far end of the lot. No driver, no entourage, just Harvey, stepping out alone. He looked thinner than Layla remembered. His designer sheen was traded in for a navy sweater and dark slacks, and the gray at his temples had deepened. She met him halfway. "Layla," he said, voice low, unsure. "Mr. Cross," she nodded. They stood in silence for a beat, the wind playing with the corner of the canvas sheet behind them. "You did what I should have done a long time ago," he said finally. "No," she replied, arms folded. "I did what you were too afraid to finish." He winced but didn't argue. She gestured to the building. "I cleaned it out, the records, the vendors, the ghosts, but I didn't do it alone. I read the follow-up piece," he said. "Sarah's second article. You gave the hotel back to the neighborhood." "No," she corrected, her voice firmer. "I gave it to myself." Harvey glanced toward the workers near the new sign. "What's the new name?" Layla stepped forward, lifting the corner of the canvas just enough for him to see. He blinked once, then smiled, tired but sincere. "Fitting," he murmured. "You can stay for the reveal," she offered, "but no speeches." He chuckled. "No speeches." They walked toward the lobby together. Through the glass, Naomi spotted them and nearly dropped her clipboard. Jenny elbowed Anthony, who choked on his coffee and muttered something under his breath. Layla smiled. "Still the talk of the lobby, I see." "Some things don't change," Harvey replied. Inside, a small group had gathered, just staff, a few regular guests, and some neighbors who'd stood by her since the early days. Layla stepped onto a wooden step stool near the door, hands gripping the edge of the canvas. "I want to thank every one of you," she began, her voice clear, "for holding the line with me. This building has seen storms, but you've all been the anchors." She looked at Naomi, Anthony, Jenny, even Miguel standing stiffly in the back with folded arms. "This name change isn't just about branding. It's a declaration." She glanced at Naomi and nodded. Together, they pulled the canvas free. The new sign gleamed in brushed bronze. "The Lantern House. A place to belong." Applause broke out. Gentle at first, then louder, more heartfelt. Some guests clapped. One of the neighbors whistled. Naomi wiped her eyes and muttered something about allergies. Harvey stood in the back, clapping softly, but said nothing. When the small crowd began to disperse, he approached Layla at the front desk. "I brought something," he said, handing her a sealed manila envelope. "What is it?" "Final transfer documents," he said. "This time you own the land too. No leases, no loopholes. Clean and unconditional." Layla opened the envelope slowly. Titles, deeds, releases, everything notarized, final. "I don't want anything else hanging over your head," he said. "Not from me. Not from the past." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time didn't see the man who had left her a mess. She saw the man trying, however clumsily, to fix it. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Goodbye, Layla." And just like that, he was gone again. That night she walked through the lantern house alone. Each floor had its own rhythm now. Citrus polish on 2, lavender on 3. The sounds were familiar. The creak outside room 307, the rattle of the vending machine coil in the lobby. She paused outside room 206, once called the ghost lady's room, and smiled. No more ghosts here. Back in the office, now the ops center, she pulled out a fresh notebook labeled Phase 2. Inside were blueprints, literally. Plans for a rooftop garden, a weekend tutoring center, a community library with a reading nook for kids, and a shelf for senior favorites. But on the first page, she'd already written her real mission in thick black marker. "We don't just run a hotel. We hold the door open. For everyone." She closed the notebook and set it on the desk. Outside, the new sign glowed softly in the night. No flicker, no rust, just a steady beacon casting warmth down the block. A month passed. The lantern house wasn't just surviving, it was glowing. Locals called it the heart of the block. The front porch was rarely empty. An old man reading the newspaper with his morning coffee, 2 kids finishing homework under the porch light, Naomi and Miss Rosa from the flower shop playing dominoes on lunch break. It wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was a second home for people who didn't know they needed one. Inside, the lobby smelled of cinnamon, pine, and old stories. The velvet chairs had been reupholstered in deep forest green, and soft jazz floated from the new speakers Jenny had installed with her brother. Near the elevator, a new community board showcased handwritten flyers. Sunday, poetry night. Wednesday, book club. Friday, open mic. Daily, coffee's always hot. One Saturday morning, Layla stood in the middle of the lobby, sipping her coffee and watching a boy drop quarters into the snack machine with such joy it made her chest ache. She remembered being his age, holding her mother's hand in a bus station, hoping someone would talk to them, not around them. Now she was the one building that space. Naomi walked past with a tray of warm biscuits. "You look like you're about to cry, or adopt a puppy," she said. "Depends how good those smell." "Peach and cinnamon," Naomi smirked, "like your mama used to make." Layla blinked. "How'd you know?" "Because you talk about her every time you're tired, overwhelmed, or being stubborn." Naomi winked. "Which, if I may say, is often." They both laughed. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the porch lights glowed on, Anthony came running in, holding an envelope. "Some guy dropped this off just now. Didn't say a word, just nodded and left." Layla took it, heart thudding. Black paper, no return address, her name in silver ink. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. "You may think you've won, you've embarrassed powerful people, but don't mistake attention for protection. Some debts don't disappear. They wait. No signature, no return address, just silence." Layla sat down slowly, the note buzzing in her mind like static. Her first instinct wasn't panic, it was clarity. She walked straight into the ops center, opened the hidden compartment beneath the filing cabinet, and retrieved her folder of copies, scans, emails, ledgers. She added the letter to a new section, labeled Threats. Then she picked up her phone. "Sarah?" she said when the journalist answered. "I think someone's still watching." And she wasn't about to let them watch her flinch. Sarah Monroe arrived at the Lantern House the very next morning. She stepped out of a cab, wearing her usual navy trench coat and a pair of worn boots that looked like they'd survived 3 mayoral scandals. Her notepad was already open, pen clipped to the edge, and her camera hung at her side like a silent threat to anyone who thought they could hide in shadows. Layla met her in the lobby, holding the black envelope like it was radioactive. Sarah took the letter, read it twice, then folded it with the same clinical precision she used on court filings. "Standard intimidation language," she said. "But it's real. Someone's watching. They want you to flinch." "I won't," Layla said, her voice firm. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You understand, Layla, you don't have to keep pushing. You've already exposed them. The police have your evidence. There were arrests. You've done more than most people would in a lifetime." Layla looked at the floor for a moment, then back up. "And yet someone still thinks they can silence me. That means it's not finished." There was a beat of silence between them. Then Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes sharpening like a lens coming into focus. "Then we go louder." That week, Sarah published a third article, not about crime or corruption, but about Layla, a full-page Sunday feature titled "The Woman Who Turned a Hotel into a Haven." It told the story not of shell companies and ledgers, but of cinnamon scones and folding chairs in the ballroom, of kids who danced in the lobby, of seniors who came to play bingo under the chandeliers that once flickered over scams. It spoke of Layla Benton not as a whistleblower, but as a rebuilder. The story went viral in all the ways that mattered, not for fame, but for resonance. Former South Bronx residents living across the country donated supplies and books. Alumni from the high school across the street offered to paint murals. A retired judge who'd grown up 5 blocks away sent a handwritten note with a check for the woman who reminded this block of its worth. Inside the Lantern House, the momentum turned electric. Donations arrived in envelopes and boxes and reusable grocery bags. Local teachers offered to host literacy nights. A woman who ran a flower shop down the street brought fresh arrangements for the lobby every Monday. And through it all, Layla stayed steady. She didn't let her guard down, not for a second. She had learned too much, seen too much, to mistake quiet for safety. She installed motion-activated lights around the property's perimeter, partnered with a neighborhood safety patrol to check in during the late hours. At Anthony's suggestion, she even signed up for a weekend self-defense class. Not out of fear, she said, but to feel grounded. The letter hadn't broken her. It had solidified her. One evening, long after the staff had gone home, Layla stood outside the Lantern House with a mug of chamomile tea and a notebook tucked beneath her arm. The air was cool and humming with the sound of summer crickets and faint traffic. Across the street, the neon sign of the corner bodega clicked off for the night. A woman passed with a stroller, offering Layla a quiet nod. She nodded back, then a car pulled up. Blacked-out windows, slow roll. Layla's body tensed instinctively, tea sloshing just slightly in her mug. The engine idled, then cut. The silence was loud. For a moment she thought maybe it was another warning, another dark envelope about to be slid under the door. But the passenger door opened slowly, and out stepped an older woman. Silver-haired, elegant in an understated way. She used a cane that tapped gently with each step as she approached. "Miss Benton," the woman said, her voice warm if a little weary. "I am. My name is Viola Kane." Silence collapsed over the block like snowfall. "Vincent's mother," she added softly. Layla blinked. I didn't expect." "I'm not here to defend him," Viola said quickly. "He made his choices. I couldn't stop him. But I've read what you've done, what you've built, what you uncovered." Layla said nothing. She didn't trust her voice. Viola reached into her coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "This belonged to my late husband. He was an architect, one of the first to draw up plans for community housing in this neighborhood when no one else would touch it. I believe he would have wanted it to support someone like you." She placed the pouch in Layla's hands. Inside, nestled between 2 antique buttons, was a check. $10,000. "I don't want recognition," Viola said. "I just want to believe something good came from my family's name, even if it wasn't my son." She turned to go, pausing only once. "To rebuild is harder than to destroy, but in your hands I believe it will last." Layla stood there for a long time after Viola left, the check still in her hand, the weight of it heavier than its paper suggested. It wasn't about the money. It was about the message. Not all legacies have to be inherited. Some can be rewritten. The next day, she deposited the check into a new account, labeled simply, the Lantern Fund. Later that week, she stood in room 301, one of the few rooms that overlooked the city skyline. The sun was beginning to set, casting long streaks of gold and amber across the wood floor. The curtains had been replaced. The walls were freshly painted. The faint scent of lemonwood lingered in the air thanks to Naomi's natural cleaning spray. But it wasn't the view or the scent that brought Layla up there. It was what the room had once held. This was where Carl had signed some of the worst contracts, where delivery men with fake invoices had waited in silence, where silence had been bought and truth had been buried beneath convenience. Now it was clean, empty, ready for something better. Downstairs, music began to float from the ballroom, soft jazz and the hum of laughter. The first official Lantern Gala was underway. Not a fundraiser, not a headline grab, just a celebration of survival, of resistance, of rebirth. Layla descended the stairs slowly. Naomi called out from the lobby, "Girl, if you don't come get this peach cobbler, I swear I'm eating it for you." Laughter followed. Layla grinned. She smoothed her emerald green dress, borrowed from Jenny's cousin, and stepped into the room. Jenny stood on stage, guitar in hand, singing an old Nina Simone classic with such raw soul the room stilled around her. Anthony was in a heated discussion about Knicks basketball with two retired mailmen. Even Miguel, who once scoffed at Layla's leadership, was helping a group of teens carry extra folding chairs. When Jenny finished, applause filled the ballroom. Someone nudged Layla toward the mic. She hesitated, shaking her head. Naomi gave her a look. That look, the one that meant, "Don't argue with me unless you're prepared to lose." Layla stepped onto the makeshift stage. She didn't need a mic, the room was already listening. "I don't have a speech," she began, "but I have something to say." She paused, swallowing back the unexpected emotion rising in her throat. "When I was 12, I asked my mom why people always called our neighborhood the rough part of the Bronx. She said, because people don't come here expecting to see beauty. But that's their loss." Layla's voice grew stronger. "I didn't understand it then, but I do now. We've been underestimated, ignored, lied to, but we have never been broken. And when this place nearly got swallowed by greed, it was your hands, your voices, your time that pulled it back." She looked around the room. Naomi, Anthony, Jenny, Miguel. Every one of them with scars and stories. "I might have signed the papers, but you built this. You made it more than a hotel. You made it a house with light." The room held its breath. Then the applause rose, not polite or performative, but wholehearted and warm. People clapped like they meant it, like they'd been waiting to say thank you and didn't have the words. Later that night, after the last guest had gone home and the music had faded, Layla and Naomi sat on the front steps with the last of the apple cider. "You did good," Naomi said, bumping her shoulder. "We did," Layla replied. The hotel behind them glowed gently. The air smelled of lemon and cinnamon and memory. From across the street, a child waved from an apartment window. Layla waved back. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe another envelope, maybe another ghost from the past. But she knew one thing for sure. The Lantern House wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in starting over. And it would keep burning, quietly, fiercely, unshakably. A light for the weary. A promise in the dark. The sun was beginning to rise over the South Bronx, casting soft orange light across the city's rough edges, when Layla Benton stepped into the Lantern House kitchen, barefoot and humming. The hum wasn't a song, not really. It was more like the feeling of movement, of something slowly repairing itself from the inside out. The hotel was quiet for once. Not silent, never truly silent. The old bones of the building still creaked and sighed as if stretching awake after decades of restless sleep. But it was the kind of quiet that comes after clarity. After decisions have been made, battles fought, and shadows turned into light. Layla poured herself a cup of coffee, the mug one of Naomi's old world's okayest cooked gifts, chipped but beloved. She carried it into the lobby where the morning sun was spilling through the stained glass windows, casting streaks of blue and gold across the tile floor. The mural Jenny's brother had painted along the back wall, an abstract swirl of lanterns, fire escapes, and rising stars, glowed in the early light. It had been a month since the gala. A month since the threat stopped, or at least went quiet. A month of steady work, slow healing, and real change. The Lantern House wasn't just thriving, it was blooming. Every corner now pulsed with life. The reception desk had become a mini welcome center with brochures for GED classes, job fairs, and a weekly walking club led by 2 retired nurses. The ballroom had been repurposed as a rotating event space. Yoga on Mondays, poetry slams on Thursdays, and community dinners every other Saturday where no one asked if you could pay. And the heart of it all was Layla. Never at the center, but always present. Hands dusted in flour in the kitchen. Clipboard in hand during vendor visits. Listening, laughing, sometimes crying behind closed doors, but never hiding. She wasn't just managing a hotel anymore. She was nurturing a neighborhood. It was Anthony who'd first called her the Lantern Keeper. The name stuck. On one particularly quiet Tuesday, Layla sat at the front desk catching up on emails when a young woman entered the lobby. She couldn't have been older than 20, wearing a too-big coat and gripping a paper folder with both hands. She looked around like she didn't quite believe the place was real. "Hi," Layla greeted her gently. "First time here?" The girl nodded. "Is it true that you help with housing applications?" "We do," Layla said, smiling. "Let me get someone to sit with you." Moments like that came daily now. The Lantern House had become what Layla dreamed of. Not a sanctuary for perfection, but a refuge for effort, for rebuilding, for those between one life and the next. Still, even in this season of peace, Layla never let herself forget what came before. That the bright light they'd created had once flickered inside corruption. That everything beautiful now stood on the ashes of something that had nearly swallowed them whole. That's why she began a new project, the Lantern Legacy. It started with one small grant, a scholarship fund for neighborhood kids pursuing hospitality, architecture, or social work. But it grew. Community leaders matched it, alumni from the local high school contributed, and a former guest who'd quietly stayed for 3 nights during the worst of winter mailed in a check with a note, "This place saved me. Please help it save someone else." Soon, Layla wasn't just managing people or walls, she was shaping futures. On a warm Friday afternoon, Layla stood near the back patio, watching as 2 middle schoolers painted the community garden boxes she and Jenny had built from reclaimed wood. The kids bickered about color choices, but their laughter rang out in the air like chimes. Naomi passed by with a tray of lemonade and muttered, "If I had half their energy, I'd run for mayor." Layla smirked, "You'd win too." That night, Layla returned to her apartment above the laundromat, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. The folder labeled Phase 3 sat on the table in front of her, filled with ideas, mentorship programs, legal aid partnerships, even a culinary training course taught by local chefs. She reached for her notebook to add one more idea when a knock came at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, just patient. She opened it to find Jenny holding a crumpled envelope. "Guy dropped this at the front desk," Jenny said. "Didn't say anything, just smiled and left. Thought you'd want it." Layla took it slowly. The paper was ordinary this time. No black envelope, no silver ink, just her name. Inside was a note, typed short. "You're making noise." But noise attracts attention. "You're not invisible anymore." There was no threat, but no comfort either. Layla exhaled. Later that night, she sat at her kitchen table, the new note beside her tea, and opened the hidden floorboard one more time. She added the letter to the folder marked Threats, now thick, but alphabetized. Sarah had a digital copy of everything. The police had a second set. And Layla? Layla had contingency plans. Still, the weight of the paper, of what it represented, settled in her bones. The next morning, she called a staff meeting. Everyone came. Jenny, Anthony, Miguel, Naomi, even Eddie, the teen who ran errands on weekends. Layla stood before them with a clipboard and the truth. "We've had peace," she said. "We've also had warning signs. There may be people who still want to silence what this place represents. But we don't hide." She looked at each of them, holding their gaze. "We stay vigilant, we stay prepared, and we stay together." Miguel crossed his arms. "You expecting someone to come through the front door and try something?" Layla's voice was calm. "No, but I'm expecting the world to keep testing us, and I'd rather be ready than regretful." Naomi nodded. "Then let's be a fortress with a welcome mat," Anthony added. "And maybe a security system that doesn't come from 1998? They laughed. The meeting ended with bagels and fresh coffee, and for the first time in weeks, Layla felt both the weight and the balance of leadership. It wasn't about being fearless, it was about being rooted. That weekend, Sarah published her final article in the trilogy. Not about crime, not about redemption, but about community. It was titled simply, "The Light That Stayed On." It included photos of the Lantern House today, the garden boxes, the murals, the book club flyers, the new front desk sign that read, "Welcome Home." And at the end of the piece, a quote from Layla, "We don't just offer rooms, we offer second chances, third ones if needed. We hold the light until you're ready to carry it yourself." The article didn't go viral, it went local. And that was enough. People brought flowers, kids dropped off hand-drawn thank you cards. A local radio host asked if they could broadcast live from the lobby. One woman stopped in just to say, "This place gave my sister courage. I wanted to see where that started." Layla heard it all, felt it all, and one night, long after everyone had gone to sleep, she stood outside the Lantern House, looking up at the sign. The wind tugged at her sweater, but she didn't move. She watched the lantern logo glow softly against the night. The city around her hummed. A car passed. A kid across the street waved. Layla waved back. This was her legacy now, not written in court files or headlines, but in slow, human acts of return. A light for the weary. A roof for the rebuilding. A hand outstretched again and again and again. At the heart of the Lantern House lies a simple but profound truth. Kindness is not weakness. It's the spark that can ignite a revolution. Layla Benton didn't come from privilege. She didn't have money, titles, or power, but she had integrity. She had the courage to act when no one else would. And in a world that often rewards silence, she chose to speak up, to stand firm, and to rebuild what others tried to destroy. This story teaches us that real change doesn't always start with a grand gesture. Sometimes it begins with a single act of compassion, dragging a stranger out of the rain, asking the hard questions, refusing to walk away. It shows us the power of community. How ordinary people, when united by purpose and truth, can expose corruption, overcome fear, and build something beautiful from the ruins. More than anything, the Lantern House reminds us that healing is possible. That places and people can be redeemed, not through force, but through perseverance, love, and light. And when we hold the light for others, especially when they can't carry it themselves, we create something that lasts beyond headlines. A legacy. Where are you watching this story from? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you believe in the power of truth, courage, and second chances, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next story that just might change how you see the world. Until next time, keep the light burning.